as previously stated, welcome everyone to Exploring Careers in Bio-Based Materials from Production to Utilization webinar from GenB project. With us today, we have EU Youth Ambassadors that will be speaking with us and sharing the presentation. And we will have, two presentations: biorefineries by biomass and microbes, and in innovative solutions in forest bioeconomy, both from EU Youth Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador Stefano Bertacci and Caterina Yogi. And after their presentations, we'll have a short Q&A session and a small closure of the session as well. Before we go on with our speakers and we let them present themselves and their content, I would kindly like to ask you to please fill in this free questionnaire. You can select a day in biorefinery in the list that opens, and you can either scan the code or click on the link that is on the slide or in the chat. My colleague Diego will share the link in the chat as well. I will give you a moment or two to fill this in. And in addition to this small questionnaire, we will also ask you to sign a signature list. Sorry, I'm sharing the link in the, to share the signature list. So you can also sign the signature list in order for us to prove that this event happened. We need, and to continue organizing it in the future, we need to also know who you were and why did you join. So please go ahead and fill in the signature list. We will share it a few times throughout the webinar. So if you don't do it now, you can do it later on, but please don't forget to sign it. Briefly about the project that is behind this webinar. It's GenB project, as I previously stated. It's the aim of the project is to raise a generation bioeconomy, which is sensitive and aware of sustainability and environmental issues. And we are aiming to work with students from the ages of as early as 4 to the end of high school, but we also work with a bit older students as well. And our aim is to kind of co-create new approaches, new materials, formats, and toolkits to help young people, parents, and teachers introduce bioeconomy in the classroom, as well as help their students change the perspective towards sustainability and change their habits and actions to become more sustainable. We are within the project. We are also creating policy recommendations for ministries of education and their policymakers. We are creating teaching resources, and all of this information, all the resources developed within the project, as well as different recordings from different events. You can find the webinars there. You can find the workshops, recordings of the workshops, and so on. So many resources you can find on the GenB resource library, which can be accessed through the link that is on the slide or by scanning the QR code. Without any further ado, I would like to present our two speakers. So as mentioned before the session, we'll go into production and utilization of bio-based materials, highlighting the transformation from biomass into products. Semi-finished, finished, raw materials, but our speakers will tell you more about it. We have Stefano Bertacci, PhD and industrial biotechnologist and assistant professor at the University of Milan. And we have Caterina Yogi, who is a sustainability manager of Fibeno in Estonia. Sorry. And with this, I would like to invite Stefano. Stefano, please, you can introduce yourself further, take over the control, and continue with your presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isidora, for your kind introduction. Thanks for all the people from around the world. It's really great to see that in the chat, people from all over Europe and beyond. It's really a pleasure to be with you here today. Today, I'm going to focus mainly on biorefineries, by biomasses and microbes, from energy to biomaterials. As a start, this is my scientific journey. I got my bachelor in biotechnology in 2012 at the University of Milano Bicocca, and then the master in industrial biotechnology. Then I worked 3 years for Galatea Biotech, which is a spin-off company of the university. And then I did in 2017 the PhD in convergent technologies for biomolecular systems here in Milano, with the period at the University of Oulu in Finland. Then got the PhD in 2021. Then I started as a postdoc, always in the group of Professor Paola Branduardi in the biotech lab here, the Department of Biotechnology and Biosciences. And then from 2023, I started as assistant professor here in Bicocca and researcher for the National Biodiversity Future Center, which is a recovery fund funded project from the EU dedicated to the valorization of Italian and Mediterranean biodiversity from different sites, and from my side is for the development of biorefineries. And since 2022, I've been appointed by the European Commission as EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassador, together with Catherine and together with other 13 great people from around Europe with different ages. And I really suggest you to look up that, because we did a lot of things during these years. So here is the presentation of the group, the research group. These are our research activities. So mainly we use microbes, specifically mainly yeast, in order to deploy them into bioprocesses by different types of approach. Either we use them as natural with their natural abilities, or we try to teach them something by metabolic engineering, synthetic biology, or with adaptive laboratory evolution, in order to obtain kind of optimized strain that we can deploy. And for what? We can give them as food some types of residues, mainly from organic matter, that are considered waste, releasing sugars by the use of enzymatic hydrolysis. So we can have a more sustainable process based on this kind of biomasses rather than edible crops or fossil resources. Then these are used by the microbe for their own growth and for the production of molecules of interest that can be different ones. I've been working with biomaterials, bioenergy, pharmaceuticals, dyes, vitamins, I will show you. And then also the optimization of the process in terms of scale up, yield, and production and productivity. And here on the left, you can also find our references on social media. So the concept of biorefineries is based on the fact that you provide, in principle, the valorization of a biomass in order to transform it in some kind of product that could be heat, energy, or specific molecule, or could be timber in principle. In our case, we use microbes, as mentioned, because microbial metabolism, both natural and engineered, can really transform raw material into something completely different. So basically what already the yeast does, transforming sugars in the grapes into alcohol for wine, that are completely different molecules. We can see here that there's a really great connection with concepts of bioeconomy, which of course these kind of processes are part of, industrial biotechnology, of course, and the use of genetically modified organism, in this case microorganism, which of course is always a tricky topic to be touched, especially in Europe. But our work demonstrates that GMOs can be deployed also for the good of the health, despite a lot of misconception about from the general public. Health in terms of both reducing the amount of fossil resources we can provide, and then obtaining processes and products that are better in principle for the environment, or solution for the environment themselves. Examples are, they say the easiest one is bioenergy. The fact that we use biomass for bioenergy is old. If we think of logs that we throw in the chimney to burn, but then there's evolution about that. For example, by the use of biofuels, liquid biofuels such as bioethanol or bio diesel instead of diesel petrol, or anaerobic digestion with the goal of the production of biogas, which the most important component is biomethane. Here is a work that had been done at the University of Oulu for the mathematical modeling of anaerobic digestion of manure in order to obtain methane. We can see here that the microbial consortium provides the production of methane in the four steps. The first one is the hydrolysis of the substrate into sugars by their own enzymes that they have, and then acidogenesis in order to produce propionated butyrate that are organic acids, and then acetogenesis to obtain acetate. These are made by bacteria, and then archaea are transforming acetate into methane in anaerobic conditions. So we can have methane that is chemically identical to the methane of petrochemical synthesis, but rather comes from biomasses. So we can start seeing here one of the most important concepts and principles in the bioeconomy, let's say, but also in bioprocesses that are in biomanufacturing in general, which is one of the way you would see mentioned this type of things, that are the cascading principle, where you can have different type of molecules or products obtained on the market, and considering their size of the market, they have a different price. So we see that everything that is related to power and heat has a lower value compared to fuels, chemicals, food and feed, and pharmaceutical. So in principle, biomass should be used for the highest value at the beginning, for example, for the fine chemicals, then what's left for food and feed, then for what's left for chemicals, and so on, going down. Also because this reduces also the price of the raw material, consider that we are competing with fossil resources that are extremely profitable. And an example is this type of process where we have idle biomass, where lipids are extracted for different purposes, and then the spent biomass can be exploited by anaerobic digestion to obtain methane, by transesterification to obtain biodiesel, fermentation for bioethanol, or hydrochar by oil, by hydrogen, depending on the type of process used. This is the graphical abstract of my PhD thesis, where I worked on different types of processes, biomasses, microbes, products, considering that different values of the initial biomass, different value of the final products. There could be vitamins as folates, or provitamins as carotenoids of biomethane, the using of different type of microbes. One of the main work was focused on the valorization of Camelina sativa meal, which is the leftover of the crushing of the seeds of Camelina sativa, which is a plant that has a very oily seeds that can be collected and used for different purposes. So the spent meal, in this case, impose an enzymatic hydrolysis, so a mixture of little Pac-Man that were eating and destroying sugars, releasing in a rich sugar-rich medium that then I provided to this yeast called Rhodosporidium turuloides, that is a natural yeast able to produce carotenoids. So we managed to obtain carotenoids that generally obtained from petrochemical synthesis, but from renewable and principal cheap source. A project that I'm working on right now in collaboration with the Department of Environmental Science here in Bicocca University is the valorization of the leftover biomass from the pruning of a new urban park, where we have leftover from mulberry trees and sessile oak, that with organosolve process we can extract the lignin that then can use for nano and microcapsules for different purposes. The idea here is that the solid leftover of the enzymatic hydrolysis can be still used for this purpose, because lignin will be still inside, but Catherine will talk, I think, I guess, a lot about lignin. And then the sugars from the growth medium would be provided to Carbospodium thyroides for the production of carotenoids. And then the idea is to close the circle and the loop and to obtain microcapsules with carotenoids inside, both of them derived from this waste biomass. Considering then the for example, the topic of bioplastic, the title, sorry, is wrong. So bioplastics, of course, are one of the most important famous biomaterials. Bioplastics are biomaterials that are either derived from biomasses, so they're bio-based, or biodegradable with both characteristics. So we can have this kind of plot where we have conventional plastics that comes from crude oil and are not biodegradable. Some plastics like PBAT, PBS, and PCL that are from crude oil but are biodegradable. Then on the other side, we have bio-based plastics but are not biodegradable. So common plastic like PET, PE, polypropylene, PP, that instead comes from biomasses. And then are those that in principle are the preferred one. So from biomasses and biodegradable, like polylactic acid, PLA, and PHA polydioxy butyrate. Again, here biomaterials comes in different size and shapes. For example, lignin can be really exploited for different purposes, and I will not say anything. I will not spoil Catherine. Another example is the SCOBY of kombucha. I don't know if you know kombucha, which is fermented tea, and the microbes that grows on there create this disc that floats, and it's mainly made of cellulose. So it's microbial cellulose, it's pure cellulose, and can be used for different purposes. And that I finish with this topic of the fermentation chemistry, where basically we can have different types from the traditional one for the production of cheese and alcoholic beverages, then with the production of biomass like Becker's yeast for human use. But then we have precision fermentation chemistry now with the production of specific proteins that are already embedded into the microbes, let's say, but also those that can be engineered for different purposes, from enzymes that can be deployed in different types of sectors, but also from pharmaceutical compounds, different types of proteins, and so on. This, of course, goes also into some very new application like cultivated meat or assembled food that normally comes from, for example, animal farming. With this, these are my contacts. I also published 3 books. Unfortunately, all the 3 are in Italian. Actually, there are 4 books, but these are the latest, dedicated to the topics of plastic and bioplastics, biotechnology in general, and microbiology. And these are also my contacts. You can find me by email, but also on mainly all social media. So if you have then any question, I will looking forward to it at the end, or also you can write in the chat.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Very, very nice presentation. If you guys have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to write it down in the chat now, or keep it for the other part of the session where we will have a small Q&A. And without any further ado, I would leave the floor to Catherine. Catherine, please go ahead, take control and present yourself. Thank you very much.
Yes, hello, also from my side. Thank you, Stefano, for this really amazing presentation, always making me feel like I should go back to school. but it was really nice. Thank you. So as said, I'm also one of the EU Bioeconomy Youth Ambassadors, but on everyday basis, I work as a sustainability manager in a company called Fibano. And today I will give you a brief overview of how we contribute to forest bioeconomy with our innovative solutions. So we operate a biorefinery in central Estonia, the one you can see on the photo here. For those who don't know, forestry and wood processing industry is very important in Estonia because more than 50% of our land is covered with forest. And it is still a really huge contributor to our economy. But as you may know, the forestry and wood processing sector also generates huge amounts of side streams like bark, sawdust, wood flakes that are traditionally used only for energy production. And this is where the concept of Fibenol was born, to find alternative ways to add more value to those side streams of forestry and wood processing. So just a few words about the history part. So we managed to find the technology around in 2016. We've managed to get funding with mentioned here the Sweetwoods project. And fast forward to last year, so 2023, we finished the construction part. And now we are in the ramp-upping phase, or almost finishing with that also, and almost reaching the full production capacity now. And as things are going really well, we are already looking into building our first industrial scale plant, which means that it's around 10 times bigger than the one that we are operating right now in Estonia. So I already mentioned that the forestry and wood processing generates huge amounts of side streams. I have an example here of a birch tree. So around 50%, so the lower part here, goes into the plywood industry. And this is considered to be the good and most valuable part of the tree. But as you may know, trees are in the shape of cylinder. And to produce plywood or furniture, you need to shave down a lot of this wood. And this is one example of the side streams that are generated. The second part of the tree is already considered lower quality because of the tree branches. And this part is usually used by pulp and paper industry. But as you may know, the pulp and paper industry is mostly valorizing only one component, which is cellulose. And the other components of wood, like lignin and hemicellulose, are usually burnt. And the upper part of tree is only used for energy production. But when it comes to the statistics, it is estimated that only around 40% of wood is actually ending up in long-term carbon storage products. But with our technology, by adding value also to the side streams, it's also possible to bring this number a lot higher. When it comes to wood industry and the wood processing industry, these industries are usually associated also with high energy use and also with big water consumption. So these are the things that we have already thought of because, as I mentioned, we have a brand new biorefinery. So we have established that we only run on renewable energy, and we have on-site wastewater treatment plant, which allows us to use up to 95% of the processed water again and again. And all this combined, we are capable of producing very environmentally friendly and low footprint products. As a reminder for the people who have had chemistry lessons in a really long time ago, or for those who don't remember from the biology classes, wood consists of 3 components. And as I mentioned before, the cellulose industry usually, or the pulp and paper industry, usually valorizes only one component, which is cellulose. But when it comes to our concept, we aim to valorize all these components, meaning that up to 90% of biomass could be generated or turned into possibly long-term carbon storage products. But I have mentioned a few times that we fractionate wood and that we have a biorefinery. It may sound really easy, but it's actually not. Stefano mentioned the organosolve process when it comes to fractionating biomass, but we operate this sunburst technology, which is extrusion-based. We are the only ones in the world using this technology. And when it comes to this extruder, we combine temperature, pressure, and mechanical force to turn this solid woody biomass that enters the process as wood flakes, and we turn it into this chocolate mousse type of mass. And from this mass, it's already a lot easier to get all the components of wood, lignin, hemicellulose, and cellulose or sugars. And we are capable of doing that within 20 seconds. And just to keep it simple, I'm not going into that many details of the downstream processing, how we separate all the components, and we will jump directly into our product portfolio. So when the wood is already fractionated, the components of wood actually look like this. So in the first picture, we have our cellulose. We call it microcrystalline cellulose. On the second photo, we have our cellulosic sugars. So there's the pre-treatment part or the extrusion part is quite harsh. So the hemicellulose part is already in monomeric sugar form, which is C5 sugars. And on site, we also have enzymatic hydrolysis process. So if we want, we can enzymatically hydrolyze our cellulose into C6 sugars. Stefano used the example of Pac-Man, but I like the example of to explain enzymes are as biochemical scissors that cut down the polymeric materials into monomeric units. So if you know that that cellulose consists of glucose, then it's easy to understand that the enzymes cut down the cellulose into C6 sugars. And last but not least is our lignin, which looks like this brownish powder. And great, now that we have the wood fractionated, but what next? Usually it's a really good question. What can you do with wood-based or wood chemicals? Then the correct answer would be that it's almost anything, everything. And here are just a few examples. So for example, when it comes to lignin, lignin is a great additive when it comes to biocomposite formulation, means, for example, bioplastics. Lignin has many great properties. It has nice brown color. It's natural. Lignin has UV protective properties. Our lignin also has really nice natural smell to it. Sometimes the craft lignin from the pulp industry is associated with this sulfuric smell. This is not the case with us because we don't use chemicals in amounts like that. So our lignin has a really nice natural smell. As you can maybe remember from a few slides back, I had the chemicals part or the molecular structure part. Lignin has a very complex structure, and by modifying that, it's also possible to produce very many different things. And adhesives is also one example of that. By adhesives, I mean different types of glues to replace phenolic components. Also, when it comes to cosmetics, as I mentioned before, not only in the bioplastics industry, but in the cosmetic sector also, we are looking, of course, more natural ways to produce everyday chemicals and everyday cosmetic products also. And by having UV protecting properties from natural components, it's also a great alternative for natural sunscreens, for example. And lignin is actually present in many different biomasses and different types of plants. So it's a great component also, for example, in feed production and also pharmaceuticals. When it comes to cellulosic sugars, Stefano also briefly already mentioned that when it comes to microorganisms, yeasts and bacteria, this world is also very complex and very interesting, and a lot of microorganisms are also capable of producing almost everything. And but the microorganisms need food for that. And in some cases, when we use, for example, sugars from food and feed industry, or the crops that are used for food and feed to produce, for example, I don't know, bioplastics or biofuels and so on, then we have the conflict of food and feed. And in some cases, why not use wood-based sugars to produce those same things? And we have a few great examples of companies that use our sugars in the production of surfactants, ethanol, also alternative proteins, biomaterials, bioplastics, and also novel foods. So it's possible to turn wood into food. And the last photo here is about MCC, the microcrystalline cellulose. So a very complex name to cellulose, but yeah. It's a great additive in paper industry because you know that there's a limitation on how many times you can recycle paper. So it's great to have new additives also in the paper making to prolong the possibility of recycling the paper again and again. So it's a great component to be used in paper industry, pulp industry, also when it comes to pharmaceutical industry. As you can already see on the photo, that our MCC basically looks like a cream. So it's a great emulsifying component for different types of cosmetic products, but also in paints and adhesives. Because the last slide had mostly photos of our products, but just to highlight how the products that can integrate our products in could look like. So I mentioned the biosurfactants part that a lot of people actually don't know that biosurfactants or just surfactants industry also use quite a lot of glucose and sugar. And it's a great replacement to use our sugars instead to produce soap. Proteins, quite often proteins are sometimes associated with meat, but proteins could also look in the form of a white powder. There are a few great examples already existing in Europe that produce alternative proteins from biomass. Insulation materials, sustainable construction materials. Lignin is a great replacement also for bitumen in asphalt making, and also, as I already mentioned, the bioplastics part. But one great example of our lignin is also usage in those biodegradable, compostable bio bags. And wood adhesives also. So it's actually possible to produce 100% wood-based furniture that contains wood and that is also glued together with wood-based glue, for example. But to make it more like not that abstract, of course, all these examples are really fancy and amazing, but to highlight a few use cases of using our products already in real life. So I briefly mentioned that lignin could be used as a replacement for bitumen in asphalt making. So we are leading with an example in that case. So all the asphalt around our production sites, not all, but majority of it is already produced and put down as carbon neutral in the example of using lignin as a replacement for bitumen. But this is not the only place where these test roads and projects are done. We have quite a lot good examples around Estonia, but not only in Estonia, also in Latvia, in Sweden, in Finland, and also in the UK. And it's a great replacement because lignin has low carbon footprint. What I mean by that is that when it comes to bio-based products, when the trees are growing, they absorb the CO2 from the atmosphere, and it is stored in the biomass. So we can use this stored CO2 as a biogenic carbon credit. So our lignin has a carbon footprint that is negative, and it is a great add-on to the calculations of CO2 footprint. Also, when it comes to regions or countries like us in Estonia, where we don't have local bitumen industry, meaning that we are highly dependent on this chemical coming from third countries, and using lignin as a replacement is a great argument for resource independence. Also, quite often, like the long-term carbon storage products are associated with furniture or wood-based houses, or I don't know, windows and doors and whatever. But it could be also asphalt. For example, when it comes to asphalt, of course, it depends on different regions and countries. But in Estonia, usually, when the asphalt or the road is already broken, it is taken up, it is grinded, and it is used again. So it's actually a really long-term product that also keeps the carbon stored. And as mentioned before, lignin is also like a local resource, so meaning that the transportation chains are really short compared to, I don't know, getting bitumen from South America and other places. And and to highlight that, of course, lignin is not the only thing that could make asphalt production more sustainable. The use of biofuels also has a great impact. Another great example is these lignin-based bio-waste collection bags. I have a few on my table also here. At the moment, we are using these in some municipalities in Estonia. They are not available on retail stores yet, but hopefully in the future. And I know that in some countries it's mandatory to have those bio bags in brown color. And usually the brown color is achieved with colorants, different types of like coloring agents. When it comes to lignin, it gives this natural brown color itself. And of course, there are still technical limitations when it comes to, bringing the lignin content higher. But at the moment, around 20% is good enough. And I don't know, it depends on the producers and it depends on the qualities of the bag. But usually those bio bags are also associated that if you already put, I don't know, for example, banana peels in it and it gets a little bit moisture, that it already breaks down almost like immediately. So lignin is like a glue type of component, so it adds strength to the material and it wouldn't break down that easily, but it would be still biodegradable and it would be still compostable. So it's also a great opportunity to incorporate the local resources into something that would make bio-waste collection more easier. I know that in some countries, the usage of these bio bags is not preferred, and it's completely understandable. But when it comes to countries like Estonia, where the bio-waste collection and sorting is still in early stages, it is a really great tool to help the people collect the waste and make it more comfortable. So it has its role when it comes to collecting the bio-wastes. But yeah, as I mentioned before, our lignin has a great smell to it. So the bags, I can give my guarantee that it smells really nice. And of course, the bags also have a low CO2 footprint. This is already also mentioned a bit by Stefano. Our wood-based sugars could be used as a substrate to produce fats and oils. We have a great partner in Estonia doing that. It's a startup company called Aiatech. They have their own microbiological cocktails to turn our cellulosic sugars into these novel foods or other fat and oil-based products. So it's possible to turn wood into food, basically. And they are at the moment also working on their novel food applications. So hopefully quite soon in the future, it would be possible to get these products from the market. And I think I have mentioned a few times this CO2 footprint part and the environmental friendliness. Sorry if you're not familiar with the term of LCA. It's life cycle assessment in long. But we are strong advocates of science-based and data-driven LCA, meaning that if we, of course, it's important when it comes to the green claims and everything else, that if we talk about the CO2 footprint and if we talk about environmentally friendly products, it has to have proof. So in our case, when it comes to our CO2 footprint calculations, when it comes to LCA, we are really transparent about it. Of course, we can do things better, and we are continuously improving our processes, our chemical use, our value chain, and so on. But this is something that is really important. And if we say that our products have a low CO2 footprint, it has to have proof. So high quality primary data, also when it comes to the whole value chain, when it comes to the chemicals that we use, when it comes to the wood that we use, when it comes to the packaging materials that we use, everything has to come with high quality data. And just be really transparent about it. And yeah, this is actually all from my side. There should be, yeah. So my wake-up call for you all today would be, let's make more from less. Thank you all for listening. I hope it was interesting to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out right now, or my email address is here. You can always send me an email and we can have a chat later.
Thank you very much, Katri, for an excellent presentation. Now we will move on to the question and Q&A part of the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to add them in the chat, or if you want, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you. We will unmute you for that. But until we get some volunteers and some courage questions, actually, Katarina, I would like to ask you something, but this maybe comes from my lack of knowledge on the topic, but what are biosurfactants?
Biosurfactants, yes. These are basically soaps that are produced from bio-based materials or bio-based chemicals. But this is the properties are basically the same as for any other soap type of product, detergent, or what would be, maybe Stefano could also step in. You have probably a really good explanation to that.
I can add two things: that some microbes, especially yeast, are naturally able to produce surfactants. And for example, they're used in detergents. I mean, there's some trademarks in Italy, say from microbial fermentation, and probably are those. And they can be used for these purposes, but also for environmental purposes. For example, for collection of spilled over oil in the nature, because oil, it's petrol, oil, and water. They can be divided, but with bubbles, they're mixed together. So biosurfactants basically helps the division, the physical division between the two phases. So helps you collect those materials that are normally melted into the organic phase. And they can be used for tensioactive purposes instead of petrochemical based solvents.
Okay, thank you so much for that explanation. I really didn't know. It sounds very interesting and complex in a way. Maybe it's complex for the unknown ears as well.
The fact that surfactants because brings you to the surface.
Okay. Makes sense as well. Thank you so much for explaining. Also, during your presentations, you mentioned that for example, Catherine, you mentioned that lignovo that you're producing has negative carbon impact. So can you both you and Stefano, can you tell us what other processes? First of all, maybe explain what negative carbon effect means and how can we get to that, how the different procedures can become carbon negative?
Yeah, of course. I tried to briefly explain that, for example, when it comes to wood, we know that when trees grow, they absorb CO2 from the atmosphere. So, for example, when it comes to different types of trees, the carbon absorption rates are also a bit different. We use birch, and we know of course, it may depend on country, but when it comes to forestry in Estonia, it's very, very strictly controlled. So when it comes to the woody biomass that we use, we know in very high details that how old the tree was. So we can kind of estimate of how much carbon is stored in the product. And of course, it could be also actually measured. So we know that this is the CO2 that is taken from the atmosphere. And this is the CO2 that is stored or carbon that is stored in the product. And of course, this is not the only component that we are talking about. We need to also take into account all the impacts that we create ourselves. For example, the wood is transported, the chemicals are transported, we use electricity, we use packaging materials, we use chemicals and so on. All these are like adding pluses to our footprint. So meaning that it's actually a really complex model of calculation, all these impacts together, because as I mentioned that our biorefinery is rather new and it's designed in a way to be very sustainable, using only renewable energy, recycling the water, meaning that our processes also have really low footprint. Our processes are not with a negative footprint in the sense that, of course, it has impacts, but the impacts are rather low, meaning that our products have carbon footprint that is negative. But of course, there are so many different ways of doing LCAs. There are so many different ways of doing carbon footprint calculations. And in some cases, it is not allowed to take into account the biogenic carbon, because in some cases, for example, if you burn the product, then the CO2 would be released in the atmosphere again. So it doesn't make sense to take it into equation. So it depends on different types of calculation methods also. But when it comes to our LCA, we have done the calculations based on like the product category rules that are established for organic basic chemicals. So it's based on the standards for the chemicals industry. But of course, different sectors have different standards and different approaches. This is not like one solution fits for all. So it's like different sectors do the calculations in different ways. So it could be debated what our CO2 footprint is, for example, from the biofuels industry or something like that. So it's a very complex topic. But yeah, it's just one approach of doing carbon footprint calculations.
Thank you so much for this great explanation. I hope it's more clear. It's more clear for me, for sure. I hope it's more clear as well for our participants. And Stefan, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to the lab work, and how is this? Sorry, I'm trying to. I'm thinking in another language, so I'm trying to translate my thoughts.
Don't
I
worry.
apologize.
We all.
Yeah, exactly. We understand.
True. So when it comes to laboratories and biorefineries, how does this combine? How do you collaborate with each other? Does majority of the innovation happens in the lab? Does it happen in the biorefinery? Or how does this kind of combine with each other, I guess?
Okay, let's say that, I mean, in my case specifically, since we are at lab scale and not a big site, so basically we are a research group and everyone tries to know how to do everything, let's say, from the molecular biology to the fermentation chemistry with bioreactors. So of course there's people that are more eager to work in something compared to something else, also for the analytics as well. Of course, trying to work with someone else is fundamental because they expand the knowledge that you have, expand also the speed or the precision of the analysis of the work, for example. And an example of the collaboration with others is the one that I explained about the valorization of lignin for the production of nanocapsules, because, for example, the organosolv process, I'm not doing it. It's more chemistry stuff, let's say. Probably if I put myself to do that, I might manage to do that, but of course it's not my main expertise. So in that case, we are collaborating with another lab of another laboratory of another department of internally our university. But during the years, I've been working with several companies, for example, because I'm working also with the waste material of spent coffee grounds. So there's this company in the Veneto region, the region where Venice is, and they are providing me with the waste from the vending machines of coffee that, we are in Italy, so we drink a lot of coffee, also from coffee machine, not only the coffee mocha. And so we have a lot of them, so to exploit them. And in that case, the industrial partner is fundamental to have this kind of biomasses. And at the same time, I'm also starting to work closely with other people, scientists involved in the National Biodiversity Future Center, because it's a huge project. We are 1,500 researchers across Italy, with different topics, because this biodiversity. So we just gathered in Palermo, in Sicily, and people talking about, animals, frogs, or forests, or marine animals, plants. So it's something very far from me. But some people are working with microbes, and there's a group from Naples, for example, working with extremophiles. So microbes that we live in extreme conditions. They are really cool because they really travel into two strange places. Also in Italy, the hot vent from the bottom of the sea. So they go deep underground, deep underwater, on the mountains or volcanoes or whatever. So it's really adventurous, let's say. Maybe we are thinking whether to work closely or not in the future on other projects involve the study of kombucha and their microbial community and how they change considering changing the biomass. So definitely, we are collaborating with different types of people. My master student has finished, and she managed in just like 8 months to have to cope with a lot of different types of people. So I think really it's interesting. Also, what Catherine does, it's close to what I does, but from different sides. So you need different expertises and so on. Also, from the LCA point of view, I can't say I'm really an expert. I know the basics, but if I have to do it by myself, I have to do to someone else. And in the Baltics, they are really expert, because I've just been to Latvia to a conference that was also sponsored by Fibenol, and they were talking a lot about LCA. Also internationally, it's fundamental to have collaboration with others. Our research group likely has different collaboration with Ireland. I have a master student that went to Copenhagen to work on synthetic biology. So it's really nice. And from this point of view, Europe definitely is a fertile ground.
Very cool. So a collaboration is the key, as pretty much everywhere.
Yes,
And when it comes to
until the moment that I found how to make clones.
of course.
In that moment, I might need 3 or 4 of them. But that would be like that you study this, you study this, you study this. That would be really helpful, let's say.
For sure, that would be.
I didn't find the solution yet.
When you do, please let us know.
Yes, definitely.
We have one question from a participant, and it's also kind of related to this collaborative part. They are asking if you, and what you mentioned that that some of your colleagues are working with microbes in extreme environments. So they were asking if you maybe sent out some, or if you did some experiments or sent some microbes or
I
how do you
wish.
call them, samples to
Just
the ISS.
yeah, I wish. Unfortunately, I'm not collaborating with any space-related work, but definitely, actually, since I'm also science communicator, also in the topics of microbes and so on, I managed to did a conference on extremophiles at the Planetary Museum of Milano, and also dealt with radiophiles that are managed to cope with high radiation from space, and also those related to space exploration. Then in that case, I merged with literature with Dante's Inferno. So I said that going into the microbial world of extremophiles is guy like going into Dante's Inferno. But with
Very
Italian
cool.
audience, it works very well because we study Dante's Inferno in school. Everyone knows it. And unfortunately, no, it would be really, really cool. Just several examples. Also, I mean, I can say I work with CRISPR. It mentioned CRISPR, which is a gene editing tools. Then I don't go into details of that because otherwise I don't go home from the lab. But I use it for the genetic modification of microbes in order to insert into yeast some genes from other organisms that could be plants, animals, or the microbes themselves in a specific way. So they got the Nobel Prize for a reason, let's say. And it really changed the way that we do that. I mean, it's 10 years that I'm in research. I'm not so old, but I used to do things in a different way, and I didn't decide at university things because they were already mainstream yet. And therefore, I had to study myself the thing, and now I use it regularly every day in the lab. So really, also the evolution of research, basic research and applied research. Um, what I know personally on I mean, I know a lot of colleagues working on science communication of space, definitely. I met a researcher that is working with the ISS, with at least the astronauts there, on the effect of microgravity on bones, osteoporosis. And they are working with Samantha Cristoforetti, which is one of the most famous Italian astronauts, female one also, and working on the effect of that because it affects a lot, especially women. Unfortunately, it's has a heavier effect when they return to Earth and they have problems and in walking, stuff like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering the questions. So sorry that you don't have the chance to work with the more ISS stuff, but
Not
hopefully in the
yet.
future. Not yet.
Never say never.
Exactly. And with this very fun note of never say never, definitely, I would like to invite you again to fill in the post questionnaire. Sorry. Oh, I did something with that. Please fill in the post questionnaire. You can scan the QR code, and it's very short questionnaire. Aside from that, I would like to thank you all for joining us tonight, for being here and for listening to our great speakers. I would also like to thank a lot both Catherine and Stefano for your participation in the webinar, for all the answers to our questions and very good presentations of what you do and how bioeconomy and biorefineries can shape the future and how it can help us become more sustainable. And with all this, thank you a lot. And I see you on one of the other Gen B events. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day.
Bye.